They thought humans were weak then. We showed them our civilian. Mining fleet? The first contact for the Zepharian High. Command with human vessels had Admiral Kekstar, thinking they were up against the scariest military fleet the galaxy had ever witnessed. The readings didn't make sense. 40-kilometer-long ships decked out with what appeared to be titanic weapons platforms. Hulls scarred and battle-hardened by untold wars. The power signature could power entire star systems. By the 7 moons, breathed Communications Officer Yolandra, her crystalline face white with fear. Sir, those ships. Their destructive potential readings are off our sensors. Each one could glass a whole planet. The 4 arms of Kekstar shook him as he held on to the command console. In 3 centuries as a space army, through wars within 17 star systems, he had never witnessed anything like this. The human species had truly released their true military strength, and it was larger than the Galactic Federation had imagined. How many? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. First scans detect 47 ships, sir. And yet more are arriving every rotation. Our long-range scans identify another convoy approaching from the outer rim. The war had gone terribly for the Federation. What began as a routine border dispute over the right to mine the Kepler system had gotten out of hand when the humans had failed to respect accepted galactic law. The Council had been sure of itself. The humans were a young race, little more than 3 centuries into the spacefaring tradition. Their spacecraft were crude according to galactic standards. Their vessels modest and unimpressive, but intelligence reports had been trickling back through the lines that depicted a vastly different scenarios. Human ships that appeared to discount precise blows dealt by Federation battlecruisers. Vessels which could somehow repair themselves during the course of battle. Crews which fought with a frenzied aggression and were unwilling to yield even when the chances seemed impossible. Sir, Sensor Specialist Morden shouted back from his console. I'm reading huge power surges out of the lead ship. It's like it's feeding on the asteroid field. The massive human ship was releasing what seemed like gargantuan mechanical appendages. It latched onto asteroids the size of little moons and began to tear them apart with no effort. Whatever technology it was using, it was converting raw material into something entirely different. They're not ships, he thought out loud. They're some sort of harvest mechanism. Roaming factories. Sir, do we fire? Tervel, the weapons officer, asked, but his tone betrayed his hesitation. Kekstar studied the tactical display. He had a battle group of 12 heavy cruisers and 36 escort frigates. When facing a typical enemy fleet, they'd enjoy a fantastic firepower superiority. These human ships, however, the smallest was twice the size of his flagship. Maintain distance, he ordered. Continue monitoring. I need to understand what we're dealing with before we commit to battle. As the hours passed, the scale of the human operation became clear. The massive ships worked in perfect coordination, strip mining the entire asteroid field with methodical precision. Smaller vessels darted between the giants like metallic insects, carrying refined materials back and forth. The efficiency was terrifying. But what chilled Kekstar's blood most was the realization it was no military operation. It had no defense line, no course for a patrol, no positioning. These ships worked. They didn't fight. That was how the human beings conducted a civilian mission. Admiral Yolandra's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Sir, I've been analyzing their communication patterns. These aren't military vessels, sir. The traffic. It's all schedules and work logistics. Shift rotations, equipment maintenance, reports on productivity. And sir, they're complaining. Concerning working conditions, salary disputes, equipment breakdowns. Sir, they're civilian workers. The bridge fell silent except for the rumble of equipment. Kekstar's insides ran cold. If these were commercial vessels, if that was the manner. The humans executed the mining runs. Sir Morden shouted, his voice trembling. Long-range sensors are picking up the approach of what looks like a human patrol group. 3 ships, much smaller than the mining ships. Smaller. Star nearly laughed at the absurdity. How much smaller? Each ship is roughly 2 kilometers long, sir. 2 kilometers. Still larger than his flagship, but tiny compared to the mining behemoths. If these were actual military vessels. Sir, the patrol group is calling us. On screen. The view screen flickered on, and a human face appeared. The creature was young appearing by human measures, his face tired and brown-haired. He was dressed in what appeared to be a dull uniform. A far cry from the showy clothing Kextar was expecting for a military commander. This is Captain Marcus Chen, commanding the Terran security patrol ship Steadfast. You're outside. Established. Protocols for the mining zones. State your business or leave the area immediately. Kextar found his voice. I am Admiral Kextar of the Zepharian fleet. We are observing. The human captain's face didn't change. Admiral, I have the utmost respect for you, but it's a commercial construction site. We have near 10,000 workers out here filling orders. Your presence is scaring them, and scared miners spill rocks. Rock spills kill miners. 10,000 workers, Kextar repeated weakly. Aye, sir. 3 shifts operating around the clock. We're running a tight timetable for completing this belt before the next convoy brings supplies. Captain Chen stopped, looking at something off camera. Sir, I'm going to have you retreat your fleet at least 50 AU away from the work area. It's company policy. Company policy. Zhang Morrison Mining Consortium, sir. Liability if the military ships get too close to the active sites. The captain's tone was dull and matter-of-fact, as if he was explaining the weather. Kextar's mind reeled. These weren't even government operations. This was a private company. A civilian corporation had deployed a fleet that could devastate entire star systems, and they were worried about liability insurance. Captain Chen, Kextar strove, if I might inquire. What are your patrol responsibilities? Just standard fare, sir. Ensure the miners do not take risks they do not need to take. Manage traffic for the transport runs. Deal with equipment emergencies. We occasionally run into pirates, but that's a rarity out here. Pirates attack. These operations, Captain Chen even laughed. Not very effectively, sir. It's difficult to intimidate a ship capable of smashing a moon when all you have available is a converted cargo carrier. Most pirates see a mining rig and set out in search of softer targets. I see. Kextar was starting to realize the full extent of what he was seeing. Captain, if you'll excuse me asking, what becomes of these mining operations when they're under threat from military troops? The face of the human grew serious. Sir, that's a job for actual military action. We're just civilian security. If it was a serious threat, they'd call the Navy. The Navy. Yes, sir. Although truthfully, I have no idea why someone's going to threaten a mining business. That's just wasting everybody's time. He shut the cum and faced his bridge crew. Each face was a mirror of his own growing horror. If the humans were running their civilian mining operation like this, if destroying on a scale like this was routine industrial activity, what was their real military like? Sir Yolandra spoke softly. I have been tracking Federation intelligence reports. Human mining activity was confirmed in 47 separate systems. For it, sir, if each operation is similar in scale to this one? Kextar didn't require her to finish. The ramifications were mind-boggling. The humans had nonchalantly sent up the equivalent of 1,000 battle fleets for a mining mission for civilians. Their real military power was incalculable.
Admiral.
Terval ventured on his own. Your orders. Kextar gazed at the tactical screen displaying the human mining fleet systematically devouring a complete asteroid belt. It had taken them a mere 18 hours to process more raw material than the Zepharian Empire produced in a calendar year. And they had the nerve to complain about the conditions. "Signal the fleet," he added at last. "We're moving away to a safe distance, sir. Should we reveal our find to High Command?" He pondered on this. How could he ever explain to anyone what they had seen? How could he explain that the civilian infrastructure of humankind was greater than what the Federation military had? "Write a complete report," he concluded. "All sensor information, communications, logs, the works. High Command must be told what exactly they're dealing with." Retreating his fleet to a safer observation distance, Kekstar observed the human miners proceed with mechanical thoroughness. They had made space-based mining into a work of art, using technology and logistics that made the Federation's military campaigns appear simplistic compared to it. "Sir," cried Morden, "I'm reading another human fleet advancing up the galactic. North Vector, mining fleet. Unknown, sir. But the energy patterns are distinct." Kekstar felt his blood freeze. "Different how?" "Sir, they're designed for combat. The philosophy behind the design is entirely different than the mining ships. They're smaller, faster, and the weapon signatures." "Sir, I'm not getting distinct." "Readings. Whatever they're using for ordnance, it's beyond the ability of our sensors to identify." There was a new voice on the communications circuit. It was crisp, professional, and overlaid with sheer authority. "All Zepharian vessels, Commodore Sarah Williams, speaking on behalf of the Terran Navy Battle Group Prometheus. You are sailing outside defined neutral zone procedures. You are instructed to declare your intentions forthwith." Admiral Kekstar's throat was dry. "Commodore Williams, this is Admiral Kekstar. We're conducting observations of civilian activity within this sector. Admiral, I understand you're working within the region near the Zeng Morrison mission. I need to inform you that your vessels are creating a perilous environment for the civilian workers. I'm mandating your retreat outside the 50O safety boundary forthwith, Commodore. If I might, we present no threat to Admiral." The human's voice sliced through his speech like a knife. "I have 10,000 civilian workers within this system. I have equipment for mining, running at industrial rates. I have transports hauling volatile material. Your battle group is a safety risk unacceptable for civilians. You'll adhere to the safety perimeter, or it'll be enforced." The threat was made with such matter-of-fact finality that the fear started to leach out of Kekstar. That was no bluster or grandstanding. That was a flat assertion of fact. "We will comply, Commodore." "Very well, Admiral. When you get up to the perimeter, you can have your observation post." I respect professional curiosity. As Kekstar's fleet fell back, he examined the oncoming human naval ships. They were classy in a fashion the mining vessels were not, streamlined and purposeful. And above all else, they proceeded with a sureness that spoke volumes for total technological dominance. "Sir," whispered Yolandra, "our sensors are showing us weapon signatures that do not correspond to anything on our databases. New technology. Sir, I do not believe these are energy weapons or projectile devices. The signatures indicate that they're warping spacetime itself." Kekstar closed his eyes. Spacetime manipulation was theoretical physics for most galactic civilizations. The energy requirements alone were thought to be prohibitive. But humans apparently had miniaturized the technology for deployment on warships. "Admiral," was Commodore Williams's voice once more. "I'm sending a data package with our sector's civilian activity information. Normal diplomatic procedure. You can disseminate it up the line." The package that came with the data was lethal in its intent. Detailed descriptions of human mining procedures, reports on productivity, safety figures, plans for growth. The humans had no intention of keeping their abilities under wraps. They were announcing them freely, believing that the knowledge itself was enough to deter. The reports Kekstar skimmed through were with increasing disbelief. Zhang Morrison Mining Consortium was among dozens of human firms with similar activity across the explored cosmos. They had almost 2 million workers across their different locations. Their material yield every year was greater than the combined total for the entire Galactic Federation, and it was all civilian industry. Sir Morden informed, the ships are positioning themselves about the mine operation. Defensive formation. The human warships coalesced into shape with grace and ease of movement. It was neither a formation he had studied while attending military academy. It wasn't for firepower maximization or protection for valuable targets. It was for keeping the rest away from the civilian workers. Commodore Williams, he found himself saying, "May I ask about your vessel's capabilities?" There was a moment's silence before the answer came. "Admiral, I'm pleased you're interested, but precise specifications are classified. I can explain that my ships are capable of system defense and protecting civilians. Nothing more hostile than that, system defense. Yes, sir. Our mission parameters are solely defensive. We're here to ensure that civilian activity can continue without interruption." There was a shiver that ran down Kekstar's spine. The defense ships, what was the offense like? "Commodore, theoretically speaking, what's the response if a hostile threat attacked human civilian activity?" Another hesitation, a longer one. "Admiral, that would depend on the size of the threat. Small-scale piracy gets taken care of by corporate security, like Captain Chen's team. Organized crime or limited military action could need regional defense units. Anything larger," the Commodore's sentence faded away. "Anything larger would be the home fleet's business, Admiral. And I'm afraid we'd rather not have that discussion." He recognized. The word was unmistakable. What he was seeing was the very bottom rung on the human military capability ladder. Corporate protection and local defense units. The real army, the home fleet, was a different matter entirely. Sir Yolandra called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive gravimetric distortions at the edge of the system." "Another fleet?" "Unknown, sir. The signatures are, sir. I think something very large is translating into normal space." The view screen transitioned and showed the boundary of the star system, where space was warping and twisting. Whatever was approaching was big enough that it was disrupting local gravity fields. "Admiral," spoke Commodore Williams, "please stay where you are. We have a planned arrival." The distortions grew greater, and then space ripped apart in a managed tier that extended thousands of kilometers. Into the tier came a construct so vast that Kekstar's thoughts couldn't readily cope with the size. He whispered, "What is that?" The thing emerging from the space-time rift wasn't a ship in any conventional sense. 'Twas a mobile city, a vast construct that dwarfed even the mining vessels. Hundreds of smaller ships swarmed around it like insects around a hive. "Sir," his voice was little more than a whisper. "Initial checks indicate the structure's diameter runs about 200 kilometers. 200 kilometers, sir, the mass readings. It's bigger than most planets." The massive construct came into stable orbit around the system's primary star, and Kekstar stood frozen in disbelief. Streams of smaller ships instantly began shuttling back and forth between it and the mining operation. The operation's logistics were dazzling. "Aurora Station, sir," Commodore Williams replied. "That's a mobile processing station. They're here for the monthly pickup." "Monthly pickup?" "Yes, sir. The mined raw materials are sent to Aurora Station for initial processing and then transported to the manufacturing facilities across human space." How many of these stations do you have?" "Aurora Station. She's one of 12 Alpha-class mobile processors. We've got another 48 smaller stations handling regional operations." He worked out the numbers, and his universe came crashing down 60 transportable processing facilities, each one larger than anything the Federation had yet created. And that was just for broad resource processing. Commodore, excuse my nosiness, but what propels something that big? Aurora Station employs a compact stellar core. Admiral, manually maintained fusion reaction supplying power comparable with a little star. Artificial stellar cores. Humans had learned to create and control stellar-level fusion reactions and miniaturize them for industrial use. The implications for military applications were terrifying. Sir Yolandra reported, "I'm detecting power signatures from that station that are Admiral. It's generating more energy than our entire home system." Producer's Kekstar shook his head blankly. He was beginning to understand that everything the Federation thought it had learned about the potential for humankind was wrong. Wrong catastrophically. Admiral Commodore Williams continued, "Please don't take it ill that I'm inquiring, but what's your interest in our mission here? Professional curiosity, or are you looking for something specific?" The question caught Kekstar off guard. How could he explain that the Federation had been preparing for war against humanity? How could he admit that they had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of human civilization? "Commodore, if I'm honest, we were conducting reconnaissance." On human military potential, there was a moment of silence before Williams answered. "Admiral, I respect your frankness. May I ask why? There have been territorial conflicts. The Federation Council has been troubled by the extension of human settlement into Federation domains." "I see." Another pause. "Admiral, it might be a good idea if I had you talk with someone from the diplomatic corps. I'm sure there are some misunderstandings which could be cleared up." Kekstar near laughed at the understatement. "That could be helpful. Yes, I'll establish a communications link. You're advised. Sir, our diplomats can be rather forthright. They do not indulge in much ceremonial rhetoric." 20 minutes on. Kekstar was speaking with Ambassador Jennifer Hayes, a middle-aged human female with gray hair and wise eyes. "Admiral Kekstar," she started without hesitation, "Commodore Williams informs me that you're here for military intelligence. I have to ask, are you intending on attacking human commercial activity?" "No," Kekstar replied hastily. "No, Ambassador. We were attempting to analyze your military capabilities." The abrupt query caught him off guard. "There have been worries about the expansion, Admiral. Let's just stop here. Human expansion is privately funded mining and manufacturing activity within unclaimed space. We're not conquering anyone. We're not taking territory. We're mining resources out of asteroids and vacant space. But the scale of your operations is driven by economics. Admiral, the Earth's got 12 billion people. Our colonies have a total of 8 billion. That's a lot of people demanding food, shelter, transportation, consumer durables. We mine asteroids for the straightforward reason it's cheaper than strip mining planets." Kekstar's perspective changed something essential within his mind. "You're saying all of this? It's economic." "Of course it's economic." "Admiral, what did you think we were doing?" "We assumed the Federation Council was building a military-industrial base for the sake of the development of the regions." Ambassador Hayes was silent for a moment. "Admiral, I believe I understand the issue. You have been interpreting the capacity of the civilian industries as military buildup. Are you saying it's not?" "Admiral, let me put it into perspective for you. The mining operation you've been watching uses 10,000 workers and provides enough raw materials for consumer goods for roughly 50 million people. It's one of the almost 200 like it across human space. We're not producing weapons. We're producing washing machines and personal computers and children's toys." The revelation was a body blow to Kekstar. All the things the Federation had presumed were preparation for war were mere routine commerce. The humans had a vast population, and resources were devoted for that population for the simplest things like the production. But the technology, he weakly objected. "The size of your vessels, the power plants, aren't needed for effective resource stripping on Earth, sir. Have some conception of the amount of power it requires to blast a metallic asteroid into fragments. The amount of structural strength it takes for survivable stresses on a large-scale mining operation. He considered it, and his final arguments fell apart. Of course, civilian mining efforts would demand huge ships and gargantuan power generation. The other option would be thousands of smaller, less productive efforts. "Admiral," the ambassador continued, "I think your Federation has made a fundamental error in understanding human civilization. We're not a military empire. We're a commercial democracy. Everything we do is driven by economic efficiency and civilian needs. And what about your armed forces? Your warships exist to protect civilian operations and ensure free trade routes. Admiral, humanity learned long ago that war is economically inefficient. It's much cheaper to buy resources than to conquer and occupy territory. But surely you have offensive capabilities, Admiral." Ambassador Hayes' tone held a warning. "You're inquiring into classified military capabilities. A tie prohibited from discussing those specifics. However, I can indicate that human military doctrine is purely defensive." "And what was the Home Fleet Commodore Williams talking about?" The ambassador's face fell. "Admiral, the Home Fleet's mission is the defense of Earth and the central colonies against extinction-level threats. It's never been placed on the lines for offensive action, and truthfully, we wish it had never had to be placed on the lines. But if it were unleashed, Admiral, no one wants to have that kind of talk. Let me explain it this way: the Home Fleet's purpose is so that humanity as a species can survive. The kind of threat that necessitated its use would be an extinctional level threat for human civilization." The realization sent a shiver down Kekstar's spine. The point was obvious. The Home Fleet was not created to fight and win wars. It was created so if the human race was facing extinction, they wouldn't be facing it by themselves. "Ambassador, what would you want me to say to my superiors?" "The truth, Admiral, that the human space-based initiatives are civilian-based, necessitated by economics, and pose no threat whatever on Federation territory or interests, and that attempting to interfere with those efforts would be ill-advised." Once the cum had finished, Kekstar sat back in his command chair, staring out into the tactical plot. The human mining operation proceeded with machine-like deliberation. Aurora Station hung motionless in space, like a mini-planet, refining the raw materials on which the fabric of human civilian life was based. Sir Yolandra whispered, "What do we tell High Command?" I considered the question. How could he tell them that the Federation had been preparing for war with a culture which considered war a waste of resources? How could he tell them that what they had assumed was military preparation was actually extraordinarily efficient non-military industry? "We tell the truth," he concluded, "that human military power exceeds our capability for evaluation, and that aggressive action against human interests would lead to the utter annihilation of the Federation troops." Just think about it, Yolandra. If this is what they're capable of for a civilian mining operation, if this is standard industrial capability, what's their real military? She was quiet for a long moment. "Sir, I don't want to know." "No, I do not." Kekstar stood up from his command chair. "Hail the fleet. We're returning into Federation space immediately. And what about our observation mission?" "Mission accomplished. We've learned everything we need to know." With his fleet on the brink of a transition into hyperspace, Kekstar gazed once more upon the human enterprise. The mining vessels worked on, industriously stripping away a complete belt of asteroids and converting it into the building blocks of civilization. Aurora Station suspended itself in space like a monument to human engineering prowess. Its manufactured star, lighting the way for industrial activity that boggled the imagination, and safeguarding it all, a modest fleet of naval ships whose very presence was a reminder that the true military power of humankind was kept invisible under the guise of commercial industry. 3 days afterwards, Kekstar appeared before the Federation High Council, giving his briefing. The gathered leaders were silent and stunned as he outlined what his fleet had seen. "You're telling us, Vexmani," the Chancellor spoke slowly, "that what we assumed were military ships were really civilian mining machinery?" "Yes, Chancellor. Operated by private corporations for purely economic purposes, and they're real military. More than our ability to evaluate, sir. But considering what we could see of their military technology on the civilian level, I'd say it's easily 100 years beyond our best technology." The council chamber was filled with anxious mutterings. The Federation's most senior military officer, Admiral Zorgok, leaned forward. "Admiral Kekstar, on your expert assessment, what would be the result of military action against humanity?" Kekstar thought about Aurora Station's artificial star, about the casual efficiency of the mining ships, about Commodore Williams' quiet confidence. "Admiral Zorgok, within 72 hours after the beginning of military action, the Federation would no longer be a political entity." The room was silent. "That's your opinion?" Chancellor Vexmani queried. "Sir, we saw a single civilian mining operation which produces more raw materials within a month than our entire empire produces within a year. Their civilian infrastructure runs on the basis of stellar cores made of a completely artificial material. Their defense ships have weapons technology which we can hardly categorize. And all that constitutes the bottom rung of their technological capability. What do you recommend?" T stood up to his full height. "Sir, I advise immediate diplomatic engagement for the purpose of forging formal peaceful relations. I advise relinquishing all territorial claims which contradict human interests. And I advise that we, under no circumstances, provide a cause for pursuit. Will humanity to utilize their real military potential." 6 months later, the Federation Human Peace Accords were signed in a ceremony aboard Aurora Station. The agreement established clear boundaries for Federation space and formally recognized human mining and industrial operations. Throughout previously disputed regions, the Federation delegate Kekstar came to the ceremony and observed the human diplomats with the same professional efficiency he had seen among their miners and their naval officers. They were pragmatic people, no respecters of ceremony, which was good for getting things done. He was visited by Ambassador Hayes during a recess in the talks. "Admiral, I wanted just to express gratitude for your truthful reporting to your commanders. It made it go a lot more easily than it could have." "Ambassador, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Were the military capabilities of humanity correct?" Ambassador Hayes was quiet for a moment, looking out through the station's massive viewing ports at the stars beyond. "Admiral, I hope we'll never need to find out." Back in his quarters that evening, Kekstar couldn't help but ponder just how totally his conception of the galaxy had been proven false. The Federation had spent generations training for a war which was finished before it started, against a foe which had never once looked on them as enemies. Humanity's true strength wasn't in their weapons or their ships or their technology, though all of those were formidable beyond measure. Their true strength was in their perspective. They had built a civilization based on creation rather than conquest, on efficiency rather than domination. And if once anyone ventured to threaten the civilization, you would see that the capability for destroying was no different than the capability for building. The mining ships continued their work in the asteroid belt, methodically transforming raw matter into the building blocks of human civilization. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the home fleet waited silently, hoping it would never be needed.